So I hope you can see my screen. Yeah, maybe a short introduction of myself. My name is Tobias Haar. I'm the technical lead for the AI division at Micronova in consulting. And I will give you a short overview today about two specific use cases that we have taken a look at in the past year regarding AI and exam. So before we start, actually, we need to clarify a very specific concept that we're going to use in all of these use cases. And this is Retrieval Augmented Generation. Probably some people have heard about this because this is a very hot topic at the moment in the AI world. And it's used by ChatGPT. Also other big companies use this, for example, Microsoft, when they offer their Copilot solutions. So this is basically a concept where you can apply AI models, AI models on data that you have in store without needing them to fine-tune them. So the basic workflow of this is we have a text document or some source where all the information is stored that we want to work on and ground our LLM, so large language model based answers on. We will then make smaller chunks out of it. So these chunks will be smaller parts of the original document or source. And these will be encoded into embeddings in basically vectors of floating point numbers. And these we can then store in a vector database. And this vector database will contain basically the whole source document, but in smaller chunks. So now what we can do with this is we can, if we have a question, query the database. And with a similarity metric, we can select the piece of information from the original source document that we want to get. And the database will give us exactly this part of the original source. It will, and we will combine that with our original question and send it to a language model, which will then be able to answer based on that context our question. So why are we doing this instead of fine-tuning a model? The answer is pretty simple. We are very flexible in the model choice here, so we can use any general purpose AI model or language model for this task. And also, so we are very flexible, and we don't need to fine-tune any big models in order to be able to answer questions on specific contexts. And also, we are very flexible in the sense that we can apply this to different contexts because we the process is always the same. We take a source document, we make smaller chunks out of it, we encode them, and then we can store them in a vector database. So this is the basic main concept for Retrieval Augmented Generation and how this works. And what we did and what we want to do is we want to apply this in specific exam use cases. So one of these use cases is the digital assistant. So basically something like a chat interface in exam where you can ask questions about exam, and it will answer your questions. So why are we actually doing this? There are a couple of challenges when working with exam that we will be able to assist with this. And one would be to find library operations. So the current exam search is based on pattern matching. So we don't find similar words. So if we search in the exam search for a specific word, we find the operations that have this specific word in it or in the description, for example. And with so this is probably, as you might have guessed, not optimal. Also, we when running test cases, we can get stack traces that we have to analyze because something went wrong and we don't know why. As we already saw, some things can go wrong when running the test cases. And yeah, in order to be able to resolve these issues, a system like that can assist. We have also the topic of onboarding new engineers into XAMPP. And since XAMPP is a very complex piece of software, which has a lot of functionality, but also that makes it more complicated or more harder to learn, let's say. A system that will be able to tell you about functions in XAMPP will be able to help you onboarding people into the team. A fourth one would be reporting of test implementation progress. So imagine you have test cases and you want to monitor how the implementation is going, how many of them have been implemented, how many of them are yet to go. You can also do that with a Groovy script. But if you don't want to, because as we heard, Groovy script documentation is not as optimal and it's very complex. If you want to do this task in a chat way, let's say, you can do this with a digital assistant too. Another feature would be if you want to build a new test topic and you have modeling guidelines and you want to adhere to these guidelines, you can ask the interface or the assistant in assisting you building this test structure to adhere to your modeling guidelines. So these were some of the challenges that we found. And yeah, before we dive actually into the solution, I will just quickly recap what the XAMPP architecture actually looks like so that we can show how this could be integrated in the XAMPP architecture. And yeah, we basically have a client, which is the XAMPP front end. We have an XAMPP application server, which will handle all the communication between the client and the XAMPP model database, which stores actually all the information that is present in an XAMPP model. And the XAMPP application server basically takes care of that by using sub-generators. And if you change something in the XAMPP GUI, you will have a change request made to the XAMPP application server, and that will trigger either a write or read access to the model database, and you will get the response, be it a change in an element or any updates regarding the XAMPP model. So this is the basic structure of the XAMPP architecture. And how do we build an assistant here now? So we have 3 building blocks. The first one is an assistant view. So in order to be able to interact with a large language model, or in this term, the assistant, we need some place to put our requests into. So this is basically a new view in XAMPP enabled through a plugin. Then we have actually a database system that stores all the XAMPP related content. We call this a knowledge graph. This basically consists of a vector store plus a graph-based database that will, for every XAMPP element, have a node, and these nodes will be connected to each other through relationships. And these relationships will be able, we will be able to query with the nodes to get the context from our database to the LLM, and so that it can answer questions. And of course, the third building block is an LLM, so a system that we can use for inference on the XAMPP content. This will basically answer your questions. It is able to form sentences and relate information that you give to it to each other. So these 3 building blocks are the main components for the digital assistant, and I will show now how we actually put that into or could put that into the XAMPP architecture. So again, we have here our XAMPP client, XAMPP application server, and XAMPP model database. So the first step would be to put all the data that we get from the exam model database into our knowledge graph system, so that we can query this system when we make requests from exam. This works in a way that we introduce a new subgenerator that will update the information in this knowledge graph database when we do changes in exam. So this is basically a separate process. While we update the exam model database, we will also update the knowledge graph. Then what we have is we have the assistant view. So this is basically an exam plugin that will enable a new view where we can type in requests. And how the flow goes is the user will type in a question. The question will be sent to our knowledge graph database system. We will get a context out of there regarding exam elements. And the question plus this context we will send to our language model. And this language model will then be able to answer the question because it knows all the relationships between the elements. It knows the question, and it can relate that to each other and will give you an answer based on your request. So this is basically the whole infrastructure, let's say, point of view. Yeah. So what is the benefit of using this? So first of all, we have enhanced search because we can not only search for exact matches but also for similar words. So we can, for example, if we want to search for a function that does an affine transformation, which is basically a linear translation plus scaling, we can do this by searching for also multiplying plus addition of an input value. So the exam operation could have two names, basically. And we will be able, if we search for a specific term, so for example, for affine transformation, we will be able to also find the operation, let's say, for multiplying, then adding a number, if there exists one, because the model will be able to tell, okay, an affine transformation is multiplication and plus a translation, which is just an addition of a fixed value. The second one would be faster onboarding, which is a big topic, of course, when onboarding new engineers onto exam workflows, which is a time-consuming topic because of the complexity of the system. We have error resolving support, which is that exam can help you analyzing your stack traces, by answering your questions regarding your structure. We have automated reporting, where exam will, without you needing to specify any Groovy scripts, will be able to tell you, okay, this and this test case has this and this status, is in this and this, let's say, state. So these are the main benefits we figured out. Regarding this use case, that would be just a broad overview. I will show you later an example of how this looks like. But first, I'll go to the second use case, which is improving a TCG workflow with artificial intelligence. So here we also have used the concept of Retrieval Augmented Generation, and we apply it in the TCG context. So why do we do this again? There are challenges when we want to work with the TCG, which are mainly how do we create a compatible test specification and test cases from natural language requirements that we can put into our ALM tool and synchronize to exam so that we can use the TCG from there on and automate all the rest. How can we convert existing test specifications to TCG syntax? which might be because you need to rerun tests and you don't want to actually trigger all of that manually. And then we also have onboarding of specification engineers to learn new TCG syntax because as was said also, there might be different OPM files and you will be, or specification engineers will need to learn the TCG syntax for a specific company or division to be able to write specifications that you can use with the TCG. Yeah, so for that, we'll take a look at the current TCG synchronization process. And this goes the following way. So we have our ALM tool, we have our exam with the test case generator, and we have our test spec editor. As Rainer previously showed, this will be a standalone. This can be used in exam right now, but it will also be able, or we will be able to use it without any exam. So yeah, the test specificators can write the test specification in this editor. And what we do now is we synchronize our requirements into the test specification editor. We can load an operation mapping from exam also in that specification editor. And then we can work with that editor. So the specification engineer will be able to manually write the test specification there. And he will get some recommendations based on the requirements and the operation mapping. If the specification engineer approves this change, he will synchronize them back to the ALM tool. And from there, we can synchronize it all the way back to exam in the usual way and run our test cases or implement the test cases with the TCG and then run them. So from there, this is the current synchronization process as is. And what we did was we thought about how we could integrate retrieval augmented generation in this context. And again, we will have our ALM tool. We will have our exam with the TCG plugin installed. And now what we do have is we have our knowledge graph database again. That will be a similar structure as with the exam digital assistant, but in this case, it will relate requirements and operation mapping syntax. So the actually TCG syntax that can be used by the TCG, it will relate them together. And additionally, it will also contain test specifications from previous examples that have been written in, manually. So this is for having more context to relate specific functionality that we get from the OPM to requirements that have already been implemented manually. So this is actually where the knowledge comes from. What we then have is we have a test specification, the test specification editor again, that will get the requirements. And now the difference is that the test specification editor will be able to query a related context for a requirement and will send that to the language model to generate the test specification. And the language model will be able to write that into our test specification editor. And what we can then do is the test specification engineer can review the changes. He can still manually change stuff that is not correct yet. And once he is finished and he approves it, this can be synchronized into the ALM tool again. So maybe as a short explanation, this arrow on the left side here, this is going from the test specification editor, but I included it here to make it a little bit simpler to understand, because after the approval from the test specification engineer, it will be synced from the test specification editor into the ALM tool. And from there, we can then sync it back to exam in the same way as we did before. And what we also do is once this change has been approved, we also sync the changes to exam, not to exam, to the knowledge graph database, to incorporate the newly established truth, let's say, because we have now a new test specification with operations from the or TCG syntax from the operation mapping and requirements from the test specification. Yeah, and these will be fed into the knowledge graph database, and with that we are basically done with the whole workflow. What we also do is, or what are the benefits of this approach? So obviously we will have faster TCG specifications in terms of creating TCG specifications from requirements. We will be able to adapt to different TCG syntaxes. We will still have a human review process. So we are from functional safety side, we will be able to ensure that the human has reviewed it. And we also, yeah, this is a possible pro, which is increased test coverage, because the LLM might be able to generate test cases that the test specification engineer might have not thought of. And with these benefits, I will also close this use case for a general conclusion of what AI use cases bring for exam. So obviously, we can decrease the cost for implementing test cases with the TCG, which is a proven best practice tool for decreasing costs for test implementations. We can also fasten processes, not only testing processes, but also onboarding processes with less human effort. And these people who are free then can be used to, yeah, innovate, basically. They can develop new functionality or take care of other tasks. So all in all, we have a win-win-win situation. Yeah, and with that, thank you for your attention. And if you don't mind, I will show you a quick example of our digital assistant that we built.
That will be great, Tobias.
So this is example. Sorry. Oh. Let's do it like this. Ah, yeah. Now it's working. So we have here, as you can see, the standard exam view. We have our exam model. We are currently in a modeler perspective, and what we did was we made this a plugin, so you can just open this in a new view. And what you can do here is basically, I could ask a question, so maybe a simple onboarding question right now. How do I create and run a test case? And then the whole workflow starts going, and we will get an answer from the assistant, assisting us in all the steps needed to execute a test case. So creating a package, creating a test case in that package, parameterize the test case, create a mapping class if we need a variable mapping, create a system configuration, synchronize our P code, create a test suite or test campaign, and then execute the test run. So yeah, this is a simple example, but of course, if you have any questions to the bot, feel free to ask anything. Currently, we have available only the exam help. So this is static information, and we are planning to introduce the exam specific model elements. End of this year. So, thank you. And if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and ask them.